So I'm back here with the next steps about your midterm essay take-home test, essay number 6, which will be a narrative essay of abstract definition with a word chosen from the midterm list. And by means of an example, I can just continue with this choosing idea that I sort of landed on a few minutes ago. And I'm going to run through how I would build a midterm essay from this word. And these are steps that you can follow. I've also written these steps out in the assignment itself, but I think it's useful to sort of see someone go through it so you knew the steps. And we're talking about a project that should be, someplace between an hour and 3 hours of work this week. This is your only job. There's no outside readings. There's no real discussion board. This week, it's all about you having a chance to focus on this one single important, complete, and rather challenging project of my midterm exam essay number 6. So, I landed on choosing, and I have landed on the story I'm going to tell, my first day at Georgia State, GSU, in Atlanta. I hated Atlanta, but I loved this job. So I have the story I can tell, and this last video I sort of was testing, I was checking out stories that I think might be useful. Sometimes people use fluency writing to test. I have students who with great profit have spent 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of the class exam, stories about choosing, stories about silence, stories about welcome, stories about generosity. And they've used fluency writing as a way of sort of sorting through their personal histories and their interests. I sort of did that verbally with you. Some of us work really well talking out loud, calling friends, sitting at the dinner table, testing out until you land on a story that you think would be useful to say. But I have this story, my first day at Georgia State University. And so my next step is to write the story out in full. It was 1990. We had a baby. I was with my kid's mom at the time, and we had another one on the way that was coming any day now, and I was hired at Georgia State. So I have this little background, and would I wear a tie or not wear a tie? I mean, I have a whole story I can tell about that very first day in that class. I did wear a tie, by the way, and I walked into the room, and I think I was the youngest person in the room because it was an evening adult class. I was 30-something, and everybody else was 40, 50, and 60. Go figure. So I'm going to write this story out in full with the notion that I am telling this story addressing this issue of choosing. That's in the back of my mind. But I'm also using the story in all of its details, smells and sights and sounds and feelings inside and all of the hubbub and busyness. I'm going to tell the story in full. And I know from experience that it takes me a couple pages. You can't tell a good story in a paragraph. I need 3 or 4 or 5 paragraphs to talk about what happened, what was going on. I'm exploring all the kinds of choices that I was making to get through that class, to get through that day, to get through that outfit, and choices that, in fact, would turn out to be quite consequential for my life. All right, well, so after I've told the story, I can continue with the steps of this essay shape. I'm going to reread my story. I'm going to make a list of adjectives of the main character. And I was surprised that day by the class. I was nervous. I was really quite lucky to land the job. I was busy. I was very excited. On and on and on. I have lots of adjectives I can draw out of that story. You guys are all so I have the issue of surprise, nervousness, luck, busyness, excitement, were all tied to this issue, this idea of choosing. I also went into I was very perplexed about whether or not to wear a tie on the first day of school. So I was choosing a tie. Who would have known that that night was going to be actually a real choice about my professional career? All right, well, we now know what I do. I can now go back. I've got some adjectives. I have some nouns. I've got all of these words now that are connected to the issue of choice. And I get to write a new first paragraph. Having to choose is a very tense and anxious thing. It's also exciting. It's also sometimes our choices surprise us. I get to write a whole paragraph about this idea, staying in abstract language and only switching and turning to my story with the last sentence. So now I have a story middle, several pages long. I have a really generous paragraph of abstract definition, a paragraph about ideas, a paragraph about the ideas of choice that are now informed by some data of my story. I've critically thought about my story and what it teaches me. And here's my big question. So, what does this story teach me about choosing? What have I learned about choices, about choosing, about discerning, deciding, accepting, understanding where I fit in a professional world and why that's okay. In fact, why that's going to be really good for me. Because, by the way, every time you make one choice, you have not made others. And part of my choosing about my professional life had a lot to do with my sense of being a dad, of wanting to raise our wonderful little boys, being a partner to their mom, making my life fit with the life of someone that I love very much, finding a professional career that fit with my family career, my family values. So I had to let go of one of the things of making a lot of cash, because you just don't make a lot of cash as a professional. You make plenty. I make plenty. I have plenty of money. So I'm the first one to say, but I gave up the big money that you would make in finance, in law, in politics, and so on and so forth. And that's a choice. That's a consequence of a really positive choice. And for me. So that's, choices aren't not, you choose it's exciting. Here's where I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be in all of these other places. I can let go of the pressures. I can let go of the fake prizes of some other careers that I certainly had thought about earlier in my life. So a choice is it's anxious. So what did my choice teach me about choosing? And, you can, without even having read the essay, without even having wrote the essay, I know the ending of my story is, what does my story teach me about this idea? And in this case, I'm already starting to think, it taught me that it's complex. When you make one choice, you'll let go of others. It really taught me that a career choice is also a lifestyle choice. That one of the things I was choosing with my career was a lifestyle that let me be a husband and a dad, and that was going to be okay. That's a lifestyle choice that I was going to celebrate and own and proudly wear, and I'm very glad I have. Without even having written the essay, I still am beginning to get glimmers of where I'm going with my midterm essay exam number 6. Just to review the steps, and here are the steps for you, I investigated the possible words: nonsense, generosity, welcome, silence, choosing. Look at the rest of the list on the assignment. I'm missing a couple. I thought out loud about stories I could tell. I decided to pick a word and a story partly because of my interest, but partly because I thought it would be interesting to you guys. Our class is our audience, and becoming aware of who you are. I'm not just writing for myself. I'm writing as part of a community, a teaching and learning community that's our class. You are always writing essays in college that as a student who's part of Housatonic, part of a major, part of a relationship with your professors, part of a relationship with a chosen profession. You have criminal justice. If you're going to train to be a detective or a cop or a forensic psychologist, you're writing, you can think about the essay choices that you make now in terms of speaking as a member of your future, as testing out what it would feel like to be a member of that profession. So our critical thinking is expensive in terms of energy, time, and effort. And so if you're going to put all the work into writing a paper, I want it to be interesting to you. But I also think we need to be interesting to the communities that we are participating in and that we're aspiring to be a part of. Who are your peeps? Who are your homies? Who's your tribe? And college is such an exciting place because we get to try it out. Oh, do I like talking to the history people in history? Do I like the psychologist land in my psych classes? How Captain Kirk's the funky English professor? With all this philosophy and theology, do I like those ideas? You can test out this community, your other classmates, as thinking of them. What of my stories would be interesting to them, would serve them and their challenges in the world that they're living, that we're living in. So I want you guys to think. Writing is hard. Critical thinking requires critical thinking, time, and energy. And it's going to help you and build your brains. But heck, if you can write about issues that concern or help or teach us lessons that we need to learn, that's a real generous gift that you would give with your work. Choosing, now I have the three parts. I have my story, I have my beginning, and I can use observations. To help me say, what is the moral of the story? What has my story taught me about the idea I start with? And that's the ending. The most important, the most challenging, and the most remembered part of your essay. So, in terms of time frame, I imagine this exercise to be someplace between a 2 and a 3 hour project. In real life classes, we redraft the essay in one day's class, about 90 minutes. We sit down and we draft the essay. We tell the story, we write the beginning, we reread it, and we draw a conclusion using observations. And I'm sitting there watching you and so forth. This is not on campus class. This is on you. But you might think of that as a time frame. Do the preliminary work, choosing your words. Let it sit. Think about the showers while you're running, walking, showering, watching the kids getting to work. Let half the work be done is you're percolating. Then when you figure you've settled on a word in a story, sit down and draft that story in one sitting. Give yourself an hour to type out that story with details, with concrete expression, with a sense of the parts that we need to understand to move us through the story. Phew, that's one break. 15, 30 minutes of thinking, 60 minutes of story drafting. You can do this by hand if that works better for you. You can draft at the computer if that works better for you. Okay, now you're going to revisit the beginning. Look at that word, write that defining a paragraph. Reread the story. Maybe then you stop because you have a beginning. Come back a third pass. You read, write some observations. What does the story teach me about the word? What does the story change about my understanding of the word? What does the story help me understand or do better because of its telling? Draft your ending. So now you have a essay in 3 parts, a concrete middle, an idea, and its ending, its thesis, its argument, its lesson, its moral of the story ending. What do you have left to do? Well, you have left to do is to type rewrite, to rewrite it. Type it into the computer, format it as close to MLA as you know how to do, and send that off. That's your work this week. We will look at 4, 5, and 6 next week, the following week, week number 7. Are we in 7 or 8? And we'll talk more about MLA and formatting. But right now, what I want you to do is by the end of this week, you will now have a complete essay number 6 written by yourself in one fell swoop or 3 or 4 swoops over the course of the week. And you now have collected 6 essays. 1, 2, 3 fables. Essay number 4 in 3 parts, beginning, middle, end. Essay number 5, beginning, middle, and end. And essay number 6. And we're going to look at the strongest of those to refine, polish, and wrap up our first big chunk of this semester. So have a great, great time. Look at the announcements. I'm available for consultations, for questions. We'll put up my office hours. All you have to do if you want to talk to me or read me things or is just tell me, you pick an appointment during my office hours that I'll have posted next week. And I'm happy to be available to you. I'm also available. You can email questions. You can post questions on the discussion board. You can talk to each other now that you have contact information for each other. Anything that helps you get through. But the sooner you get started, the happier you're going to be. Good luck. I'm looking forward to these essays. I know you will teach me things that I'm ready to hear about. Have fun.